Within weeks of being elected, Chancellor Rachel Reeves claimed to have discovered a £22 billion fiscal black hole left behind by the dastardly Tory. PR and the IFS had already warned that Labour would inherit an eye-wateringly tight fiscal position, but that didn't stop Reeves affecting to be surprised. Nobody else was. No matter, the search was on for some big tax rises to fill in the black hole. But it didn't stop there, because now the talk is of tax rises and spending cuts totalling £40 billion.
Andrew Neil couldn't contain his emotions. His tough, persistent and ruthless interview style literally made Rachel Reeves, the future chancellor, tremble with nervousness. In this tense conversation, which stirred up the public, Neil mercilessly accused Reeves of making empty promises and confusing statements that have no real basis. Families continue to suffer from the unbearable cost of living, and I am desperately fighting to provide more financial support for working people. That is why we have done everything possible to protect their salaries without increasing national insurance, income tax or VAT, raised the cost of living and froze excise taxes on fuel. It's not just an attempt, it's a cry for help. The atmosphere was so tense that the air around them seemed to sparkle with tension, and Neil's words sounded sharper and more insistent than ever when he raised the issue of Labour's alleged support for working-class families. But here's the real problem. It's not just about promises. Neil pointed out with ruthless precision the actions or lack thereof that undermine the most basic trust of society.
The one job that I've always wanted to do is to be Chancellor of the Exchequer. I was an economist at the Bank of England for many years before I became an MP. I worked in financial services. I know how to run a successful economy. I just want the chance to be able to do that and turn this economy around so that it actually works for working people in our country again.
The approval ratings of the Labour Party are plummeting, and this is no longer a secret to anyone. The party was once a symbol of hope and support for many working families, but now it is stumbling under the weight of its own promises. Reeves claimed that she would take care of people's financial well-being, but critics bitterly claim that these are just empty words that have no real meaning. And what about the cuts in heating payments this winter? Neil didn't let her evade the question, and his insistence only served to emphasize the tension of the situation. As winter approaches, pensioners are at a complete loss. How is it that the party that once promised to protect them is now taking away their support? Where is the care they dreamed of?
With tax rises doing the heavy lifting at $35 billion, it said, out of the 40 billion. Now, that hasn't stopped novice ministers getting into a tizzy over possible cuts to their departmental budgets. Some, including the Deputy Prime Minister, have written to complain, though any government planning to spend over £1 trillion this year, as this one is, but can't shave $5 billion off that total, really doesn't deserve to be in power. Note, however, that even Reeves isn't claiming the notorious Tory black hole has mysteriously doubled in size. Oh no, tax rises are now being sought to increase public spending. Above all, we're told, on the NHS. So
the arguments don't end there, and the heat of passion only intensifies. Labour's economic strategy has been heavily criticised, and Reeves finds himself at the very centre of this heated and intense debate. Neil made it clear with ruthless clarity that people no longer believe in empty promises and political games. They demand concrete answers, and their discontent is growing. Why have the Labour Party failed to deliver on its key promises? Why do their policies harm those they claim to stand for? Will Reeves be able to save a sinking ship, or will Labour's mistakes turn into a disgrace that will haunt them for a long time? Neil's direct confrontation underscores that this is not just a political spectacle, it is a real battle for trust. The moment of truth has come for the Labour Party and its leadership, and the public is holding its breath, watching every step carefully, waiting for the storm to break.
I still don't understand why you think the EU is now in safer, even better, optimistic hands with a failed German defence minister, a failed Belgian prime minister, a former finance minister found guilty of negligence in a multi-million-pound euro scandal, and a Spanish politician who's been a cheerleader for repression in Catalonia. Why is Europe in good hands with people like that?
Well, that is an opinion, and certainly Ursula von der Leyen has been criticised.
She's the second most, in the Der Spiegel poll last month, she was the second most unpopular politician in Germany. Her department has been under investigation for corruption scandals and dodgy defence contracts. The Spanish politician, who is now the EU's foreign policy man, was done for insider trading.
Rachel Reeves wants you to believe that she's here to line your pockets with money. Sounds bold, doesn't it? But wait, this promise was made at the very moment when the Labour Party's ratings are plummeting and public discontent is growing. It was Rachel Reeves, along with Keir Starmer, who supported the changes to the winter fuel allowance, which effectively left pensioners without the necessary support during the most difficult period. Now she finds herself in the spotlight, trying to convince everyone that she is the Chancellor, who is able to fix everything and restore hope. But is this really the case?
Much for spending plans being fully costed. Now the air is thick with what taxes will rise. Employers' national insurance contributions? Almost certainly, since that could bring in an extra 12 billion. Capital gains tax? There's another couple of billion in tinkering with that. Fuel duty? Why not? It's not risen since 2011. There's an extra 5 billion in it, and Reeves can claim it's all part of Labour's green agenda. It is also, of course, a tax on working people, which Labour's manifesto specifically ruled out. Of course, all that still doesn't add up to 35 billion in extra revenues, so who knows what else Chancellor Reeves has in store for us on October the 30th. All we can be sure is that it will bear no resemblance to what Labour said to get elected.
That's the real problem. Reeves' promises to help working people sound tempting, but they contradict her own actions. The withdrawal of money from pensioners in the harsh winter was not just a financial blow, it is a real cry for help, which is difficult to combine with the image of a caring leader that she is trying to create. And the timing for such statements is extremely unfortunate. The Labour Party's ratings are plummeting, and critics bitterly claim that Reeves' words are more like a desperate attempt to save the situation than real solutions that can change people's lives.
How can how can Europe's future be safe in these people's hands?
I think that the important thing to remember is that the defence secretary that you are calling a failed German defence secretary...
Well, it's the Germans that call it that.
Well, not all Germans.
Most Germans do, including the Bundestag report on Germany's unpreparedness. 60% of their planes can't fly. 100% of their submarines can't take to the sea. They sent the German army into the Arctic NATO exercise with broomsticks for guns. That's the woman who's now president of the European Commission.
Andrew Neil, as always, did not stand on ceremony and accused her of a political show, emphasizing that this was not just a play on words. People are at a loss. How did it happen that a man who agreed to make cuts suddenly became a hero to working-class families? This is not only a matter of politics, but also a matter of trust, which has been undermined. Reeves is trying to restore Labour's reputation, but for many, the scars from past decisions are still fresh and painful. Will she really be able to regain her self-confidence when her own track record is being harshly criticised?
A quote here from a pretty prominent economist, and they say that Labour needs to provide an alternative to aggressive policies being prioritised by the Conservatives. The banks and those earning more than £100,000 could quite easily contribute a little more, and unless they do, inequality and poverty will inevitably soar in the months and years ahead. Do you agree with that statement?
The way that I believe that you can reduce inequality, reduce poverty, and actually also improve the living standards of ordinary working people, not in poverty, but struggling to get by, is through growing the economy.
You know the economist that she quoted? That was actually you.
Well, look, I mean, I want to reduce poverty and inequality. I didn't go into politics, but how do you do that? What are the practical things that we can do?
Well, your suggestion in that quote was to tax the banks more and those earning more than £100,000 more, but you've gone back on that.
Well, look, the way that I think that we can lift people out of poverty and reduce inequality, as I say, is to get the economy growing.
Rachel Reeves's promises are one thing, but what she's not saying speaks volumes. The increase in national insurance is a serious omission in her promises, and it causes people a lot of questions and discontent. With insane inflation squeezing every family's budget, the idea of raising taxes is not just frustrating, it causes real panic and anxiety. However, Reeves prefers to remain silent. Why doesn't she raise this issue? Does she really think the public won't notice? This is not just ignoring, it is a reality that millions are facing. An increase in national insurance rates means that businesses face rising costs, which ultimately fall on the shoulders of employees. Either salaries remain at the same level, or prices continue to rise, leaving people in despair. Families are already struggling to make ends meet as grocery bills skyrocket and energy prices skyrocket. Thus, Reeves' silence does not look like a well-thought-out strategy, but as a cowardly attempt to avoid uncomfortable questions, leaving people in ignorance and fear for their future. What are your thoughts? Tell me your opinion in the comments. See you.